Hi folks, Scott Weaver back from Factory Direct Window Treatments. This time we're going to be working on a flat Roman shade, and I'm going to give you a few tips and tricks that I've learned over the years. The first thing is your lining. I like to use a nice thermal lining. It's a thermofoam lining. It's stiffer and it makes a better shade. Secondly, when I cut my thermal, I like to cut it exact width of what your shade's going to be. So if you have a 30-inch wide shade, cut it 30 inches wide. And then in your length, you want to add 4 extra inches over your finished length. So again, if you have like a 40-inch long shade, you'd be cutting it 44 inches long. Now the fabric which I have laid out here, I have the face down on my table. I've cut that 4 inches over my finished width. So a 30-inch wide shade, you're going to cut 34 inches wide. And what that allows is a double 1-inch side hem. This is my side hem I'm showing you here. And I've taken this, I've put my lining on, and I've put many pins in it. I want to make sure it's held down very well. So I'm centering my lining. What I have is 2 inches left over on this side. I'll turn this around so you can see it. I have 2 inches left over here, and I have 2 inches left over here. Now in the length of my shade, I've cut that 12 inches over my finished length. 40-inch long shade plus 12 would be 52 inches. Now what happens is when you put your lining on from the top, it's automatically, with my formula, you're going to have 8 inches left on the bottom. That's going to allow me for a double 4-inch bottom hem. So on your sides that you have your 4 inches left over, this makes it a little easier because you know that the width of your lining is the width of your shade. So when you're putting in your lining, you're going to bring your first fold up to the lining. Then your second fold goes over your lining like so. Then you're just going to pin it in. This makes for your 1-inch side hem. This kind of just, you don't have to keep measuring everything. You know your lining's cut to the exact width. Once you've got this over, you're going to be darn close. So then once you have that, you go ahead, go over to your other side. And of course you want to continue it, follow it down. Now you can straight stitch this, but we actually use a blind stitch machine on this. It just looks a little nicer, but not everybody has a blind stitch. But if you have a blind stitch option on your sewing machine, go ahead and use that too. On this type of fabric though, if you straight stitch it, you probably wouldn't even see it. It's solid fabric. Sometimes with the prints you can't straight stitch. So anyway, that's how you get your width of it. It's as simple as that. Then at this point you'd be bringing it over to your sewing machine. You got your hem all in and you'd be sewing it down. Then after you have the side hem sewed in, you're going to pin in the bottom. Now don't forget, we've already got our 8 inches over, so that's another quick easy, because you're going to bring this over your 4 inches right to the edge of your bottom of your lining, and then double turn it. Boom, just like that. You go ahead and put the pins in here. And you go ahead and sew this down. Then when you're ready to mark your shade, basically going left to right, you don't want to go over any more than 10 inches on a shade per ring. So your rings can't be spread any farther than 10 inches apart, going horizontally across. And your rows going up can only be as much as 8 inches up, because you got a 4-inch hem, so you don't want this to go over your hemline. So just kind of remember, when you're sewing your rings up your sides and across, 8 inches up and no more than 10 inches, 10-inch rows going across. And if you've got a real flimsy fabric, you want to keep it maybe 7 inches, 7, 8 inches. I usually say between 8 and 10 inches is where I want my rings spread apart. Now, having said that, my second tip is going to be the bottom weight bar. Instead of, we use an aluminum bar, we put in this, it's like a 3/8 aluminum bar, but they're fairly expensive. So what you may want to do, instead of doing that, go to Lowe's, Home Depot, Ace Hardware, and get yourself a threaded rod. This is a threaded rod. This is a 1/4-inch threaded rod. Comes in all different lengths, up to 10 feet. So check your Lowe's or Home Depot. They're easy to cut. You can cut them with a hacksaw, and they're a good weight. So keep that in mind. That that makes an excellent bar. The second tip here is sewing on your rings, and this is a really a very easy way, because I don't sew on our rings. We actually use classic crochet thread. Now, why classic crochet thread? Well, it's stronger than your regular thread, and you don't have to keep going through. I don't sew our rings on. We actually tie our rings on. So when you're ready to mark your shade, by the way, this is just a sample of a shade. Let's say I'm going up every 8 inches. That would be 8, 16, 24, and of course the very bottom one. I take my thread and I pinch both the fabric and the lining together. And I bring it through like so. I bring it to my next one. So this eliminates cutting and everything. You're just using one big long thread like so. Going up to my next one. That's that. And I'll show you what that looks like in a second. Cut off my excess. Okay, so now I got one row right across. Then what you do is you're just going to go in between each one. You're going to cut them. You take your ring, sew a double knot. This is so much faster than hand sewing. Not saying it doesn't take you a long time, but I think you'll find this faster than any type of machine that I've seen people do on YouTube. You don't have to line anything up on your machine. You're tying them. Now the bottom ones, the very bottom ones, you want to go ahead and take hot glue and glue them in, because that's where the weight, all your weight's going to go. There you have it. Then you go ahead and you just cut them down. Now we're going to talk about another savings, is putting your bottom bar in. Now when you put your bottom bar in, you go ahead and you can slip it in like you normally would. Now this one's, anyhow, you slip it in. This one's a little longer. I just brought it up to show you. But anyway, you would slip this in and keep it even here. But once you have it in, take hot glue instead of hand sewing this down, and you can glue your bar in just a little bit in there. Just glue it so it doesn't move around. And then just take your glue and you glue it. Of course, this is all sewn up, of course, but you'll be taking your glue, gluing here and gluing right here, pressing down on it. And nobody would ever see that. Now on the other side, where I sewed my rings, you can barely see the little dots on them. And of course, you're going to want to use, I used just a basic ivory, but if I was actually selling this for a customer, I would be using a green that would match this, or something that would match. But for just a sample, this is what I do. And we're talking about the extra 4 inches I was talking about up at the top of this. Because you're going to cut your fabric 12 inches over the finished length. That allows for your 8 inches for your bottom hem, but then you're going to have an extra 4 inches up here. So then you're going to go ahead, get your finished length on this, draw your line across here when you're ready, and then I'm going to show you one that's finished. This is a Roman shade already finished, and the extra 4 inches on the top is so you can staple it on. I used a piece of pine board. This is a 2.5 inch wide pine board, and I drew my finish line, of course, and then this is all stapled up in the top. So that's what your extra 4 inches is for. Now the next thing I'm going to show you in my second part of the video is a couple of tips on pressing your Roman shades, because it's important now that you've made your Roman shade, you've got it mounted. Now you're going to have to go ahead and work it out with the folds and pressing the folds in. So that'll be next time. Thank you very much. Scott Weaver from Factory Direct Window Treatments.